Hi, this is Glenn, and today we're going to talk about building a strong foundation with your exercise program. This is a good video if you're just starting out or beginning an exercise program, but it can also be used for those who've been working out a while just to make sure you're doing the right things. So first off, why is it important to build a firm foundation or a strong foundation and do the right types of exercises and the right type of programming? Well, number one, and probably most important, it's going to lessen your chances of an injury. Injuries happen with a strength training program, and there are certain things that we can do to lessen those risks. So number one, it reduces the risk of injury. Also, it's going to teach our muscles how to fire properly. We talked about injuries just a few seconds ago. Well, if you're firing muscles incorrectly, that can actually lead to a higher chance of injury as well as poorer results and not developing the muscles to their fullest potential. Also, by building that firm and strong foundation, we're actually going to make greater improvement. What do we do before we start? We always start with goal setting. It's funny to me how I see people that are like, well, my friend's doing this workout plan, or I saw this on YouTube and I thought I'd follow this program for a while. We always want to be clear about what our particular goals are, and then we match up the appropriate program for you. So goal setting, identify what you're trying to accomplish is key before building that strong foundation. Once we have our goals set, it's a good idea to perform some assessments. And assessments can look at things like strength, flexibility, cardiovascular exercise, mobility. Those are some things that we want to assess. When we find our strengths and our weaknesses, we want to make sure that then we incorporate exercises that are going to help us with our specific needs. So for example, if through doing some basic assessments, you determine that you have tight hip flexors, well, that could lead to lower back pain, for example. So identifying those strengths, those weaknesses, we can then plan exercises designed specifically for you to get your results and ward off injuries. Also, what I like to recommend is prehab exercises, especially as we age, but really at any age it's a good idea. We know that with a strength training or exercise program, there's a few areas that are more likely to be injured. And those are our shoulders, our lower back, and our knees. Those are fairly common, and if we're proactive and we do what I call prehab exercises, speaking of prehab exercises, I actually developed a video on prehab exercises and the ones that I recommend to help prevent injuries, again, to the shoulders, the low back, and then also the knee. So doing prehab exercises can help you ward off injuries. In addition to the prehab exercises, there's common mistakes. So we have common mistakes that we see in the gym, and we want to make sure that we don't fall into those common mistakes. One is adding weight too quickly. I know we all want to progress and we all want to get stronger and faster and more cardiovascularly fit. Well, especially when it comes to strength training, we tend to add too much weight too quickly. So some rules of thumb are, first, make sure that you can perform exercises through a full range of motion prior to adding extra weight. So for example, oftentimes we do things, it's called a back squat, and that's where you put weight on your back and perform a squatting movement. It's a great exercise, but we need to ask ourselves, if we can't squat all the way up and down with no weight in good form, then we really shouldn't be adding extra weight. we have to learn the movement through a full range of motion prior to adding resistance. Once we can do that through a full range of motion, everything looks good, then by all means, go for it. Go ahead and add some weight. In addition to adding weight too quickly, we also want to overdo it. So a lot of times people jump in and they're like, hey, if I'm not really sore the next day, then I didn't do things right. And they start off and they're doing multiple sets and multiple exercises, and their body's not quite used to it. We really don't want to do that. A couple reasons. Number one, if you overdo it just with pure volume of exercises and sets and reps, you're actually going to increase your chances of what's called an overuse injury. Also, it's not the best way. Excessive soreness is not a great idea. While a little bit of soreness says, hey, I'm working the muscles, I'm making sure that I'm pushing myself somewhat, we don't want to get wrecked to the point where we're just so sore we can't move, or especially if our joints start to ache. If our joints start to ache, that's a telltale sign that we're overdoing it. Besides adding weight too quickly, also being too aggressive with the number of sets and reps, one of the biggest things that I see people neglecting is avoiding stretching and trigger point. Those are going to keep you in the game. They're going to keep you flexible. They're going to help prevent overuse injuries, and they're going to just get you results and make you feel better as well. I tell people, for me personally, about a third or even a little bit more of my own workout time, if I add everything up, is devoted to stretching and trigger point. So I would encourage you to not neglect stretching and trigger point. In addition to stretching and trigger point, we want to look at your activities of daily living. Activities of daily living. For example, no matter what you do, if you're going home and sitting at a desk and having poor posture, and you're doing that for 10 or 12 hours a day, unfortunately, the work you do in the gym for 30, 40, 50 minutes isn't usually going to be enough to offset that poor posture. So look at your activities of daily living. So if you're sitting at a desk all the time, that can be problematic. So I encourage people who have a sedentary job where they typically sit, consider getting a standing desk. A standing desk can help keep you looser in the muscles that will help with back pain, for example. In addition to looking at our activities of daily living, we want to make sure that we strengthen the correct muscles. In general, we tend to be over tight this way. We tend to all have a rounded posture, a head forward posture, and we need to get out of that. So typically, we want to make sure that we strengthen, they're called our posterior chain or posterior muscles, and that's going to help us with posture, injury prevention, and just healthier living. So a lot of times I'll see people, especially the guys out there, they want to do bench press or push-ups. And unfortunately, what that tends to do is strengthen these muscles, and it actually enhances more of a forward rounding posture. So while we do want to do things like push-ups or even bench press, we want to make sure that we offset those with pulling exercises like a row or a lat pull down to make sure that we offset that. So again, it's important to strengthen the muscles in the back of our body. In addition to strengthening those posterior muscles, we also want to really consider skipping plyometric exercises or dynamic exercises when we first start an exercise program. Plyometric exercises involve jumping or bounding. There are things like jumping squats or jumping lunges While they can play a role in an exercise program, usually those dynamic, explosive movements put more stress on your body and they're going to increase your chances of injury. So build a foundation first for a couple of months before starting a lot of plyometrics. Also, just a quick note on plyometrics. As we age, our body is made of collagen and our collagen structures weaken. So doing plyometric type activities in your 40s, 50s, and beyond is something you may want to really push the pause button on and think long and hard before we do a lot of those as we age. Those are some things that we want to consider to build that strong foundation. There's things that we want to incorporate and also things that we want to avoid to make sure that we're getting the most out of our exercise program. This is Glenn, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up below and subscribe to our channel. Also, head over to freedomforlifefitness.com and learn more about how we can help you reach your health and fitness goals.